All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be Chasing the Dragon, the reactive waiver wire show. In this case, so I just got done going over after waivers, the script for that tomorrow. It does look like it's going to be dirty. I don't know how much time I'm going to have. Hopefully, I may start working on it tonight. Uh, if not, like it may be right down to the wire. I don't know when I'm gonna be able to get that done. It's gonna be dirty if I do end up having the time to do it before waivers clear. In this case, I don't know how competitive your league is. You probably got to give a good once over in your league and see like who did not get drafted that should have been drafted in the first place and pick those guys up. I probably won't be talking about those guys today when it comes down to that. So like if your Bills are available, your Corey, Crosby, Merritt, your Bills, yeah, like snatch those guys up. But I can't imagine like if you're in a super competitive league like a Bukas are going to be available or anything like that. So that even means like a Keon Coleman I'm not going to be talking about today. And then the other thing is if you're streaming defenses, and a lot of us are, the Rams are probably going to be the one to go pick up. The Titans are one of those offenses that we thought were going to be bad and they did not look good. They didn't disappoint. So we can talk about like picking the Rams up. If the Niners are available in your league, the Saints are going to be one of those offenses that we're going to be targeting all year long. And then it's a little dicey, but as bad as the Dolphins looked, and we did hear the rumors that the Dolphins look bad, the Patriots picking them up and rolling them against the Dolphins may not be a bad idea either. All right, quarterback situation. I'll start off with Daniel Jones. So I did watch some tape. He did look better. He was pushing the football vertically down the field. His two rushing touchdowns were quarterback sneaks, but they didn't go to Jonathan Taylor, so we can expect that if they get down to the 1 yard line, they will sneak it again. Does have deceptive nimbly bimbly. He's one of those guys. We can go back to, where's it at? 2022, 700 yards rushing, 7 touchdowns. So it is there. We could talk about like getting enough of the rushing work that we can push him over the line, and then at that point, it's like how consistent this offense is going to be. And again, this is the Dolphins that we expected to be bad, and they did not disappoint week one. So like how consistent this is going to be. Well, if I'm in a one quarterback league and I drafted one of those quarterbacks that I shouldn't have been drafting, those mid-range quarterback ones, especially with Purdy potentially being out this week. I don't know if I would necessarily start him this week against a predictive bench against the Broncos, but if he performs well, again, like I may have a weekly starter at that point. If I paid on those quarterbacks I shouldn't have been paying for. Now, other guys that we can talk about being on those lists of guys that we already knew could end up being league winners. Michael Penix, he does have nimbly bimbly. That one rushing touchdown was a scramble. He does have deceptive athletic ability after all those injuries. And then it just becomes an issue of how consistent the higher volume passing is going to be. The Buccaneers did make it a point to take away the passing game, but it doesn't matter if he's good or not. Like those are the things that I like, and I probably would be a little bit aggressive about that. We can talk about the Bengals matchup when it comes to Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars. I would not be chasing that with your roster at this point, and that's because like I just don't know the Jaguars. That offense, the little bit of tape I did watch, that offense looks weird. The Bengals are supposed to have a really bad defense, and it wasn't there against the Browns. We can say whatever, like trying to predict things like week one and overreact. In this case, if I'm one of those guys that are streaming, there's probably going to be better options when it comes down to it. Geno Smith. This was one of the offenses that we were expecting to be better than they were last year. They didn't disappoint. So you get like 362 passing. He does have a little bit of the nimbly bimbly on top of that. So like if we can keep that going forward down the line, probably would not be rolling him against the Chargers in week 2, but stashing is probably not a bad idea. Michael Penix, maybe you could get away with that in that offense. This Aaron Rodgers for passing touchdowns, yeah, I'd probably be chasing that. I'll get into it a little bit more in after waivers tomorrow. But until Caleb Johnson ends up getting more than 4% snaps, they may be primarily passing when they get in the red zone. And that means that like that 4 passing touchdowns for the foreseeable future may end up being consistent. So like if Aaron Rodgers throws 40 touchdowns in this offense, am I going to be surprised? No, absolutely not. And then it does not look like Jackson Dart is going to get the start this week, but like it does look like Russell Wilson's on a short leash, and we can talk about like if there's a guy that has the rushing upside to be that mid-range guy, the goal line fullback, it would be Jackson Dart. So stashing him, be a little bit aggressive on that overall. Now, running back situation, I'm going to get the 2 main guys out of the way real quick. Trey Benson, I would be expecting a usage flop between him and James Conner. He looked better. Demari DiMercado, the dirty work back for the Cardinals, no snaps. It's just him and Connor, and I can see Connor becoming the dirty work back and Benson becoming the primary efficiency guy. that down the line. I'm not saying that like there's league winner in that because Connor's probably going to take a certain work, regardless unless Connor gets hurt. But like that would be the main upside to being aggressive on your Trey Benson if you're trying to win your league at this point. And then DJ Giddens, I don't care if the coaches come out and say like, oh, the neck scare that Jonathan Taylor had, he could have played in the game, but we were up so much. Being aggressive on a guy like DJ Giddens before we know what the injury reports are going to be, that's kind of the point of chasing the dragon. This one, like being aggressive on that one. He has league-winning cuff, regardless, and then now we may have already had that injury scare when it comes down to it. So it doesn't really matter until we find out what the injury reports are going to be. So these are the two guys I would be aggressive on. Did say go out and get your Dylan Sampson shares. I have two caveats to this one about why I probably would not be interested in him. First of all, Judkins, he was signed by the Browns, so like he's eventually going to get a role in the offense. I was expecting that like maybe he wasn't going to get signed. He did get signed. He's on the commissioner example list. Rocket Sanders, he ended up getting the goal line work for the Browns, and Jerome Ford ended up like out snapping Sampson. So if I need a shake and bake RB2 for like a next week or so, like maybe I'm gonna get that with Dylan Sampson. I just don't know outside of chasing that like 8 for 64. You know, if you're gonna get like enough to really move the needle when it comes to winning your league. Now, the Jaguars did trade Tank Bigsby today to the Eagles. Tootin would be the obvious choice. I think this gets like really murky. I was kind of trying to figure out like what was going on with the snaps and the offense when it comes to the Jaguars. Allen, the 7th rounder, he was in the game also. Like Bigsby started, he was the second guy into the game after ETN, but Tootin did get 2 red zone opportunities compared to ETN. It's probably going to be a mess when it comes down to it. So like you're probably looking at a split backfield, one way, shape, or form when it comes to the Jaguars down the line. So like if you're going to be chasing that, I would not be surprised if ETN still gets traded and they were showcasing him week 1 to get to see what they can get with between the guys. So anyway, moving on to the wide receivers. The guy that I think has the closest shot to being a league winner after week 1 is Keyshawn Boutte. If you're new to the channel, we were tracking this last year with the snap share, and then it's new coaches, but they still liked him enough to give him the 82% snaps in week 1. I think that's going to be consistent, 8 for 6 for 103. Stephon Diggs on a snap count did have the less or the higher efficiency, less productive routes. I think it was like 8 for 6 on like 45% snaps or something like that. So I can say that the guy that I want more, if I'm going to be chasing the upside, would be Boutte compared to some of the other guys that are out there. Would not be chasing the 16 targets for Hollywood Brown. I can understand chasing vacated opportunities with the Worthy injury and then Rashee Rice, the shoulder or the suspension that he got. I would just say that I think this offense is going to be a train wreck. And sometimes you got to do what you got to do to get out of the game. So I don't know how much that 16 targets is going to remain consistent down the line, but you do you on that one. Cedric Tillman, he's probably the next one behind Boutte that I would be going after on the 88% snaps, 8 for 5 for 52 and a touchdown, and that was a red zone tug. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense, especially with Fannin coming up. He should have already been drafted, but if he's not and you want to be chasing that one, that's fine. If Keon Coleman's available, I can understand you going after Keon Coleman, but I'll just say 8 of Keon Coleman's targets happened in the 4th quarter, and that weird wild game that the Bills and the Ravens got into. So Josh Palmer's his 9 targets were distributed over the course of the game. Probably still not going to move the needle when it comes to league winner. So if you're still chasing your Keenan or your Keon Coleman as a league winner versus your Josh Palmer as a wide receiver 2. Quentin Johnston, again, you got to be in leagues where some of these guys like wide receiver 3s have a lot more value than the leagues where wide receiver 3s grow on trees. Chasing touchdowns is a good way to win your league. It's also a good way to lose your league when it comes down to that. But 82% snaps versus I think Keenan Allen had 67% snaps or whatever it is. It's just not going to be consistent when it comes down to chasing that. And at this point in the season, I want my roster spots for league winners. And then the other one that I will say, if you're in leagues where wide receiver 3s have value, Calvin Austin, 80% snaps. So when you're wrong, you're wrong with Roman Wilson, 80% snaps, 6 for 4, a touchdown, and that was a red zone opportunity. So that 80% snaps means he's a wide receiver 2 when it comes to the Steelers, and they may be a little bit more pass heavy until they can figure out the running back situation. So yeah, that would be something if I'm in the right league, I would be interested in. Tight ends, I don't trust Juwan Johnson. He meets the metric of second contract tight ends. This offense is bad. And he's the beneficiary of not being able to push the football vertically down the field with Cooks and Olave and Shaheed. And so this is going to be him on 11 for 8 for 76. But again, if you're chasing touchdowns, you ain't going to get him with the Saints because they're not going to be down there in the red zone. And then Brenton Strange, 79% snaps, 4 for 459. I think he's just going to be in that, like, fringe tight end one discussion at certain points of the season. A lot of mouths to feed in that offense. I just don't know how much you're going to get enough consistency to move the needle. Like, there are other guys that I would be attacking at this point in the season. We'll talk about a couple of them, like Harold Fannin, 72% snaps, 9 for 7 for 63. Yeah, he's basically the de facto wide receiver 3 in the offense when it comes down to it. Like, how consistent that's going to be, I don't know, but I would be aggressive on it if I want to. The guy to be aggressive on when it comes to your waiver wire outside of, like, Giddens and Benson, Michael Mayer in this case. And that's going to be like, we don't know what's going on with Brock Bowers. And that means that, like, we can get, like, full unicorn Michael Mayer at this point, like, between draft capital and football ability. And then if it just all comes together right at the beginning of the season, like, this is not an after waivers thing. You probably don't have to put a lot on your Michael Mayer to be right. And I was looking at this right before I went live when it comes to, like, Brock Bowers. Like, no news can tend to be a good sign that, like, it's bad news. So, like, attacking that early, like, with your Michael Mayers, is probably not a bad idea if you're going to be chasing the theoretical possibility of that, like, unicorn when it comes down to it. So again, Michael Mayer and Trey Benson and DJ Giddens would be the guys that I would be attacking hard. I think Boutte is probably, like, the top wide receiver on the list right now to be going after, and then good batch of quarterbacks to be a little bit aggressive on if you did the thing that you're not supposed to do and go after those mid-range quarterbacks. So anyway, hopefully I will get after waivers done at the appropriate time tomorrow. It may actually be pushed to Wednesday at this point because personal life stuff. Otherwise, like, I'll see you guys when I see you.